On August 30th, 2025, police were called to Millvale Court in Cincinnati after reports of a shooting. Inside a residence, officers found 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers with a fatal gunshot wound to the head. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The suspect, identified as 25-year-old Marshee Luther, was taken into custody within hours. Investigators confirmed that the two women had been in a relationship that ended in conflict. According to court records, the shooting occurred shortly after an argument when Bowers returned to residence following a brief separation. Luther was charged with murder and entered a plea of not guilty, claiming self-defense. Prosecutors argued that the victim was unarmed at the time. The case now moves through the court system, with hearings scheduled to determine the outcome. A single gunshot has left one woman dead, another facing trial, and a family demanding answers.
Accused of murdering her ex-girlfriend.
Yeah, so her attorney says it was self-defense. Our WLWT News Size anchor Ashley Kirkland has much more on what happened during her first court appearance today. Hi, Ash.
Hi, guys. Well, prosecutors say 25-year-old Marshee Luther shot and killed her ex-girlfriend, 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers. And today in court, prosecutors argued for a high bond, saying the two women were in a verbal dispute that escalated to Bowers being shot and killed. They say the victim didn't have a firearm, only mace. There's no word on what led up to the argument. Luther pleaded not guilty to murder. Luther's attorney asked the judge to consider a bond of $100,000 at 10%. Her attorney says there's a lot more to this story and that Luther was defending herself.
Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now let's begin. Taralynn Bowers was 29 years old at the time of her death. She lived in Cincinnati, Ohio, and was a mother of 4 children. Her role as a parent defined much of her daily life, balancing personal responsibilities with raising her children in a community where she was well known. Friends and family described Bowers as someone who was bubbly and outgoing, with a personality that made her the life of the party. Those close to her said she was approachable, welcoming, and known for her kindness. She was seen as someone who could walk into a room and immediately bring energy, which earned her a strong social circle and many connections in her community. In addition to her family responsibilities, Bowers had recently taken steps toward her long-term goals. Reports confirmed that she had re-enrolled in school and was working toward becoming a licensed practical nurse, LPN. This decision suggested she was attempting to improve her future prospects, secure a better career, and provide more stability for her children. Within her neighborhood, Bowers was remembered for her generosity and joy. She was viewed as someone who contributed to the lives of those around her, leaving a positive impression. Her presence was felt not only within her family, but also in her broader social environment. Marshee, also referred to as Marshee, Luther was 25 years old at the time of her arrest. She lived in the Bond Hill area of Cincinnati, a neighborhood not far from where the shooting occurred. Luther and Bowers were previously in a relationship. According to those familiar with the situation, their relationship was marked by tension and unresolved issues. Reports indicate they were no longer together at the time of the incident, though the exact timeline of their separation is unclear. Their history included arguments and disagreements, some of which escalated into larger conflicts. In terms of her background, Luther did not have a prior criminal history. This fact was emphasized by her attorney during early court proceedings, suggesting that this charge was the first major criminal allegation she faced. The absence of a criminal record was likely intended to frame her actions as out of character or to provide the court with reason to consider her credibility when presenting her defense. Outside of legal matters, Luther cultivated a particular image for herself. On social media, she styled herself as the baddest statty. The phrase reflected a bold and confrontational persona. Posts and public image suggested she projected toughness and authority, presenting herself as someone who was not easily intimidated and who commanded presence. In the courtroom, Luther pleaded not guilty to the murder charge. Through her attorney, she claimed self-defense, asserting that the shooting was not intentional but a response to perceived threat. During the arraignment, her defense highlighted the absence of prior criminal activity and stressed that Luther acted to protect herself. Prosecutors countered this argument by stating that Bowers was unarmed at the time of the incident and may have only carried mace. The case was filed as a murder charge, with bond denied by the judge due to the severity of the allegations. Luther's claim of self-defense set the stage for the legal battle ahead, positioning her explanation directly against the accounts provided by Bowers' family and the evidence collected at the scene. The dynamic between Bowers and Luther is central to understanding the case. Their relationship, though once close, had reportedly ended prior to the shooting. Sources indicated there were ongoing tensions between the two, with unresolved conflicts that contributed to frequent arguments. On the afternoon of August 30th, 2025, events unfolded inside a residence on Millvale Court in the Millvale neighborhood of Cincinnati that ended in the death of 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers. The sequence of events leading up to the fatal shot has been pieced together through police records, witness statements, and courtroom filings. While a complete story remains under investigation, what is known so far provides a timeline of how an argument between two women escalated into a homicide within a matter of hours. According to police and family accounts, the conflict began earlier that day between Bowers and her former girlfriend, 25-year-old Marshee Luther. The two women were reportedly arguing about an incident that had taken place out of town. Details of the disagreement have not been fully disclosed, but sources suggest the issue had carried over into their interactions and caused tension in their relationship. The argument intensified as the day progressed. Witnesses say the discussion became heated inside the residence on Millvale Court. Family members later explained that the disagreement was not resolved, and the atmosphere inside the home became increasingly strained. At some point during the confrontation, Bowers decided to leave the residence. Reports indicate she exited the house in an effort to create distance and defuse the immediate conflict. The separation was not permanent. After leaving, Bowers later made contact again, expressing her intention to return. This decision marked a turning point in the timeline. Instead of staying away, Bowers sought to re-enter the residence and continue the discussion, hoping to talk through the disagreement with Luther. According to witness testimony, Bowers requested to come back to the residence after her brief departure. She was permitted to return. Witnesses state that she entered the home shortly before 3:45 p.m. The intention, according to family members, was to have a conversation and attempt reconciliation regarding the earlier dispute. However, the sequence of events upon her re-entry was almost immediate. Witnesses later described that within seconds of Bowers walking back inside the home, a gunshot was fired. Witness accounts and court records indicate there was little to no physical struggle observed before the shooting occurred. Reports from people familiar with the incident state that as soon as Bowers entered the house, the shot was discharged almost instantly. The bullet struck Bowers in the head, causing catastrophic injuries. She collapsed inside the residence. At approximately 3:45 p.m., a 911 call was placed reporting the shooting. Emergency responders, including Cincinnati police officers and medical personnel, were dispatched to the 2000 block of Millvale Court. Upon their arrival, they found Bowers lying inside the residence with a gunshot wound to the head. Despite efforts to assess her condition, Bowers was pronounced dead at the scene. The quick response of emergency crews confirmed the immediacy of the fatality. Law enforcement officers secured the residence and placed Luther under arrest shortly after their arrival.
We have a Cincinnati woman who police say was shot and killed in Millvale, speaking out for the very first time. So this happened over the weekend on Millvale Court. Brittany Harry is live there with how the family wants her to be remembered. Brittany.
It was on Sunday that 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers was allegedly shot and killed by her ex-girlfriend. I spoke to her sister today, who tells me that she really wishes that her sister would have stayed away from this ex-girlfriend. Now the family says that they want justice for their loved one who was taken too soon.
It just feel weird, like unreal, and it still kind of don't feel real. She just leave behind 4 kids,
This is Taralynn Bowers, pictured with her 4 children who are now without their mother after Cincinnati police say Bowers was killed on Sunday in a shooting in Millvale. It happened at an apartment complex in the 2000 block of Millvale Court. The family held a balloon release at the complex on Monday.
I just know people were saying that as soon as she walked in the house, then they heard shots instantly, like it was just a couple of seconds afterwards.
Bowers had been in an argument with Marshee Luther, according to court records. Bowers' sister, Adrienne Wilson, tells me Luther is Bowers' ex-girlfriend. She says the two were arguing over a situation that happened out of town. Wilson says her sister left, but then Luther asked her to come back. She did, and that's when Wilson says her sister was shot, according to Cincinnati police, in the head.
I can't see my sister no more, so it's too hard to suffer.
Bowers is described by her sister as a very happy, friendly person with an outgoing personality, someone with a bright future that was cut short.
I just want people to know that my sister was just the nicest person ever. Like, despite what everybody else have to say about her, like, she always had a pure heart. She was nice. She would give anything to anybody.
So Luther was in court yesterday where she pleaded not guilty, claiming self-defense. Bowers' sister says she's not so sure about that claim and wants Luther to have to stay behind bars as long as possible. Meanwhile, Luther is being held on no bond right now, and she's due back in court on September 11th. I'm reporting live in Millvale. Brittany Harry, Fox 19 Now.
The shooting took place on Millvale Court, a residential street in the Millvale neighborhood of Cincinnati. The area is a cluster of residential housing, with neighbors close by. Despite the proximity, reports indicate that no one in the neighborhood heard or reported an argument prior to the gunfire. Only the single gunshot was noticed. The Hamilton County Coroner's Office later confirmed that Bowers died from a single gunshot wound to the head. This wound was determined to be the sole cause of death. Investigators determined that Bowers was not carrying a firearm at the time of the shooting. Prosecutors stated in early court filings that she may have had mace in her possession, but no gun or other lethal weapon was recovered on her body. The firearm used in the shooting was located and taken into police custody. It was identified as belonging to Luther. Investigators have pointed out several gaps in the available forensic and testimonial evidence. No indication of struggle. There were no immediate signs of a fight or physical altercation between Bowers and Luther inside the home. The speed of the shooting suggests that it occurred almost immediately upon Bowers' return. Lack of witness detail. Neighbors did not report overhearing a confrontation. The only sound described was a gunshot itself. This absence of external witness detail limits the ability to confirm the exact sequence of the altercation. Unclear timeline. While it is known that Bowers left and later returned, the time intervals between her departure, her request to return, and her reentry are not fully established in official reports. Weapon status. Aside from the recovered firearm, no secondary weapon was found on Bowers, aside from reports of possible mace. This leaves questions about the context of Luther's self-defense claim. The primary piece of evidence in custody is the firearm allegedly used by Luther to shoot Bowers. Police confirmed its recovery at the scene. It remains central to the investigation and subsequent legal proceedings. Additional evidence collected from the scene includes forensic samples, such as shell casings, blood evidence, and trajectory analysis of the gunshot. These details are expected to be reviewed during court hearings. In the aftermath of the August 30th, 2025 shooting on Millvale Court, family members and those closest to Taralynn Bowers began to provide their accounts of what happened and how they understood the sequence of events. One of the most direct perspectives came from her sister, Adrienne Wilson. According to Wilson, people present at the residence told her that when Bowers returned to home after briefly leaving, she did not have the chance to speak or reconcile. Wilson recalled hearing that as soon as Bowers walked back into the house, shots were fired almost immediately. She emphasized that there was no drawn-out confrontation inside the residence and no second chance for conversation. Wilson's account highlights the swiftness of the act and the limited opportunity for intervention. Beyond recounting the sequence of events, Wilson also spoke about her sister's character. She described Bowers as a kind individual, well-liked and approachable, who was known for her openness and friendliness. Wilson explained that Bowers had a strong bond with her 4 children and was focused on building her future while raising them. According to her, the loss created a void not only within their immediate family, but also in a broader circle of friends and community members who had come to rely on her presence. Community members echoed similar descriptions of Bowers' character. Several who knew her described her as someone who was loved by many and devoted to her children. They characterized her as an energetic personality who contributed to social gatherings and left a lasting impression on those around her. Within days of her death, a balloon release was organized in her memory. Friends and neighbors attended the gathering, releasing balloons into the air as a way of honoring her life. The event was not only symbolic, but also demonstrated the level of support she had within the community. It became one of the most visible public acknowledgments of her passing and underscored the impact she had made on others. Witness accounts from neighbors provided only limited information about the actual incident. Residents in the Millvale Court area reported that they did not hear a prolonged altercation or any loud argument leading up to the fatal moment. Instead, they recalled hearing a single gunshot. This detail aligned with Adrian Wilson's statement that events unfolded quickly after Bowers returned to the residence. The absence of multiple sounds of struggle or extended noise further added to the impression that the situation escalated in seconds. However, with no eyewitness testimony describing what occurred inside the residence beyond the gunshot itself, the investigative record depended heavily on the statements of those directly involved and the physical evidence collected by law enforcement. Together, these accounts from family, friends, and neighbors created a layered picture of the tragedy. Wilson's detailed description placed emphasis on the immediacy of the shooting. Community members reinforced the portrayal of Bowers as a well-loved individual whose absence was widely felt. Neighbors confirmed the suddenness of the event by noting the lack of extended noise or multiple gunshots. While none of these accounts provided a complete explanation of motive or intent, they helped investigators and the public establish a clearer timeline of what occurred on August 30th. Following the fatal shooting, law enforcement acted quickly in their response. Within hours of the incident, officers identified and arrested 25-year-old Marshee Luther as the primary suspect. She was taken into custody and booked on a murder charge connected to the death of 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers. The speed of the arrest indicated that authorities considered the evidence at the scene, along with statements from those involved, sufficient to establish probable cause for her detainment. Luther's first court appearance came the next day. During the arraignment, she was formally charged with murder. Standing before the judge, she entered a plea of not guilty. Through her attorney, she claimed that her actions were taken in self-defense. This legal position immediately established a central issue that would define the case moving forward, whether the shooting of Bowers was a deliberate act of aggression or an act committed under perceived threat. Prosecutors presented their early arguments during the arraignment. They emphasized that the victim, Taralynn Bowers, had been unarmed at the time of the shooting. According to prosecution, the only item Bowers may have been carrying was mace, but no firearm or lethal weapon was present. The prosecution argued that this fact undermined Luther's self-defense claim and instead suggested that the use of deadly force was unjustified. By presenting this point early, prosecutors sought to frame the case as one of an unarmed woman being fatally shot without sufficient provocation. The defense countered by drawing attention to Luther's background. Her attorney highlighted that she had no prior criminal record. This was presented as an indication of her character and as a potential mitigating factor in assessing her intent or behavior on the day of the shooting. By emphasizing her lack of criminal history, the defense aimed to establish doubt that she would commit a premeditated act of violence without cause. Instead, they framed her actions as situational and tied to a claim of self-preservation. During the hearing, the judge was tasked with determining whether Luther should be granted bond while awaiting trial. After considering the seriousness of the charge and the circumstances described, the judge ruled against bond. Luther was ordered to remain in custody. The denial of bond signaled the court's recognition of the severity of the allegations and the potential risk associated with her release. The court also scheduled the next steps in the legal process. A preliminary hearing was set for September 11, 2025. At that hearing, prosecutors will be required to present sufficient evidence to demonstrate probable cause that Luther committed the offense as charged. The defense, in turn, would have an opportunity to challenge the evidence and reinforce their claim of self-defense. This stage was not intended to determine guilt or innocence, but to establish whether the case should proceed to trial. The legal proceedings left several unresolved questions. Chief among them was the strength of Luther's self-defense claim. Without evidence of a weapon in Bowers' possession, prosecutors argued that the claim was not credible. However, the defense maintained that the perception of threat, not the presence of a weapon, was a determining factor in their client's decision to use force. The clash between these two positions set the stage for an extended courtroom battle. As of early September 2025, Luther remained in custody with her case pending. The community awaited further details to emerge from the preliminary hearing and subsequent legal filings. The outcome of these proceedings would determine whether the case advanced toward a full trial or whether any alternative resolution might be considered. The investigation into the death of 29-year-old Taralynn Bowers has produced a timeline that is consistent across initial reports, but several gaps remain. Authorities confirmed that Bowers and her former girlfriend, 25-year-old Marshee Luther, had argued earlier on August 30th, 2025. Bowers left the residence after that dispute. Minutes later, she returned, at which point she was shot in the head and pronounced dead at the scene. What triggered the escalation remains unclear. Prosecutors state that Bowers was unarmed, with only mace possibly in her possession. Luther's defense claims she acted in self-defense, though specific details of what threat she perceived have not been fully outlined in open court. No publicly available reports have indicated whether Bowers displayed or threatened the use of mace in those final moments. Without further documentation, the sequence of actions between the time Bowers re-entered the residence and the gunshot remains uncertain. The question of premeditation versus impulse is central. If Luther retrieved and prepared the firearm in anticipation of Bowers' return, that suggests planning. If the weapon was already nearby and discharged quickly after Bowers' entry, that points more toward impulsive action. Investigators have not disclosed if the firearm was located before it was used, or whether fingerprints, DNA, or gunshot residue analysis has been conducted to reconstruct events. These forensic results will be key in determining intent. Why Bowers returned despite earlier tension is another unanswered issue. Family members reported that she wanted to reconcile and resolve the argument. If her return was intended as a peaceful gesture, that complicates the self-defense claim. If she returned while still visibly agitated, defense arguments may point to her demeanor as justification for perceived threat. Absent video or audio evidence, the interpretation of her return relies heavily on testimony. Surveillance, audio, or additional forensic evidence has not been publicly confirmed. No reports have mentioned cameras in the residence or surrounding properties. Neighbors stated that they only heard a single gunshot and not an extended argument or fight. Without video or external witnesses, the investigation depends on physical evidence inside the residence and the statements of those involved. The lack of independent corroboration leaves gaps that may weigh heavily in court. The strength of the self-defense claim must be compared against available evidence. If the victim was unarmed and posed no imminent threat, the claim weakens significantly. If mace was recovered and positioned in a way suggesting intent to use it, the defense may argue that a weapon, though non-lethal, still justified a defensive response. Prosecutors have emphasized the absence of a firearm or lethal weapon on the victim. Forensic experts may need to establish distance between the shooter and victim, trajectory of the bullet, and whether the use of deadly force was proportionate. These technical assessments will become crucial in determining whether the shooting aligns with self-defense or constitutes unlawful homicide. This case also highlights broader issues beyond a single incident. One is the dynamic of domestic violence in same-sex relationships. Studies indicate that intimate partner violence occurs at comparable or even higher rates in same-sex couples compared to heterosexual ones. However, such cases often receive less public attention and face unique barriers in reporting. Victims may hesitate to come forward due to stigma, fear of outing themselves, or lack of resources tailored to LGBTQ+ individuals. In this instance, the fatal outcome underscores the potential severity of disputes in same-sex partnerships, raising questions about whether warning signs were missed or ignored. Another issue is the lack of awareness and reporting. Many domestic conflicts escalate behind closed doors with little external observation. Friends and family may be aware of tension, but fail to recognize patterns of control or violence. Law enforcement may also lack specialized training in handling same-sex domestic disputes, which can limit preventative measures. In Bowers' case, no official record of prior domestic incidents between her and Luther has been reported, but the sudden escalation suggests deeper conflict. The absence of earlier intervention raises questions about how communities can identify and address risks before they turn fatal. Community safety in Millvale and Cincinnati as a whole forms another layer of concern. Millvale is a neighborhood with ongoing challenges related to crime and violence. Residents are accustomed to law enforcement presence, yet incidents like this one emphasize how quickly violence can erupt in private spaces. Public safety initiatives often focus on gang activity, drug crimes, or street violence, while domestic situations receive less attention until tragedy occurs. The Bowers case demonstrates how personal disputes can contribute to community statistics on homicide, complicating perceptions of safety and policing priorities. The criminal justice system's handling of bond denial and self-defense claims is also under scrutiny. In this case, Luther was held without bond after her not guilty plea. Prosecutors argued that the seriousness of the charge and the circumstances justified detention. Defense counsel countered by pointing to Luther's lack of prior criminal history. The court ultimately sided with prosecutors, reflecting a trend toward stricter pretrial detention in violent crime cases. Critics argue that this can disadvantage defendants who have not been convicted, while supporters maintain that it protects the community and ensures court appearance. Self-defense claims further complicate proceedings. In Ohio, where the shooting occurred, self-defense laws allow individuals to use deadly force if they reasonably believe they are in imminent danger of death or serious bodily harm. The burden of proof has shifted in recent years, requiring prosecutors to disprove self-defense rather than defendants to prove it. This legal framework means that Luther's claim must be carefully weighed against forensic evidence and witness testimony. If doubt exists about whether Bowers posed a threat, jurors may be reluctant to convict. Conversely, if evidence shows Bowers was unarmed and non-threatening, prosecutors may succeed in portraying the shooting as unjustified. Ultimately, the broader context underscores systemic issues, underreported violence in same-sex relationships, the limits of community safety measures, and the complexities of self-defense in the legal system. Each of these factors shapes how the Bowers case will unfold in court and in public perception. Family members described her as a devoted parent raising 4 children. Relatives highlighted that her responsibilities as a mother were central to her daily life. She balanced caring for her family while working toward future goals, which included re-enrolling in school with the intention of becoming a licensed practical nurse. Statements from her family and friends noted that she had recently begun focusing on furthering her education to create stability for her children. In addition to her role as a mother, Bowers was remembered as a daughter and a sister who maintained close ties with her family. Her sister, Adrienne Wilson, spoke publicly, explaining that she believed her sister had walked back into the residence that afternoon without anticipating the violent result. Wilson's remarks became a consistent theme in news coverage, pointing to the shock and suddenness of the act. Family members repeated that they wanted her remembered for her kindness, social nature, and the strong family bond she left behind. The community's recognition of Bowers' life extended beyond family statements. Days after her death, a balloon release ceremony was held in Cincinnati to honor her memory. Organized by friends and relatives, the event allowed neighbors, acquaintances, and community members to gather, visually marking the loss and ensuring her name remained in focus. At the balloon release, participants described Bowers as someone who connected with others easily. Though the event was emotional in nature, it also served as a public acknowledgement of the seriousness of the case and the impact on those closest to her. The emotional toll on her 4 children became a major point of emphasis. With their mother now deceased, the children face an uncertain future regarding guardianship and long-term stability. Relatives noted that the loss was especially severe because of her central role in their lives. Media reports highlighted the children as part of the broader tragedy, underscoring how quickly the incident changed the direction of their upbringing. While detailed custody arrangements were not immediately disclosed, it was acknowledged that extended family would likely become primary caregivers. Her family also used the aftermath to demand justice and accountability. From the earliest days after the arrest of Marshee Luther, Bowers' relatives voiced that they expected a full legal process to hold the suspect accountable. Statements given to local media described the family's determination to attend hearings, follow the case, and make sure their sister and daughter's death was not overlooked in the court system. The family's demands framed the narrative in the weeks that followed. Their grief was paired with insistence on transparency and fairness in the handling of the case. With the immediate shock of the event moving into the judicial process, attention turned to what would follow for the suspect, 25-year-old Marshee Luther. Arrested shortly after the shooting, Luther was charged with murder. At her initial arraignment, she entered a plea of not guilty, with her defense attorney stating that she acted in self-defense. Prosecutors, however, countered this by noting that Bowers was unarmed at the time of her death, carrying nothing more than mace. The court denied bond, citing the seriousness of the charge and the circumstances of the shooting. Luther was ordered to remain in custody pending further proceedings. A preliminary hearing was scheduled for September 11, 2025. That hearing was expected to clarify whether the charge would proceed directly to trial or whether additional evidence and motions would alter the course of the case. As the legal process advances, several possible outcomes remain open. Conviction. If prosecutors establish that the shooting was intentional and without justification, Luther could face a conviction for murder, carrying a lengthy prison sentence. Acquittal. Should the defense successfully argue self-defense, or if reasonable doubt is raised concerning the intent or justification, Luther could be acquitted. Reduced charges. The court could consider lesser charges, such as manslaughter, if evidence indicates the act was not premeditated but occurred in the heat of the moment. Each of these outcomes depends on evidence not yet made public, including forensic details, witness testimony, and potential surveillance footage. At this stage, many facts remain under investigation. The continued investigation is expected to clarify several unanswered questions. Authorities have not yet disclosed whether surveillance cameras in the area captured the incident. Forensic examination of the firearm and surrounding evidence may provide additional insights. Witness accounts, particularly from those who heard the gunshot, will also shape the prosecution's and defense's arguments. These factors will be central to determining whether the act was self-defense, premeditated, or otherwise. For the family of Taralynn Bowers, the future of the case represents the final stage of seeking justice. Their statements indicate that they intend to remain active participants throughout the process, attending hearings and ensuring that her story remains central to proceedings. This case stands as more than the details of one shooting. It highlights broader issues of relationship violence and how conflicts can escalate with fatal consequences. Although the relationship between Bowers and Luther was not widely documented, it underscores the importance of addressing domestic disputes before they reach such outcomes. The fact that the dispute was between two women in a same-sex relationship also brings attention to an area of relationship violence that is often underreported or overlooked. From a legal perspective, the case will test arguments of self-defense against prosecutorial claims of unjustified violence. It will also highlight how the court system navigates cases where the line between personal conflict and criminal intent is contested. From a community perspective, the case represents both a loss and a call to awareness. The balloon release and public tributes demonstrated the impact Bowers had on those around her. The continued involvement of her family ensures that the legal process will remain in public view. Ultimately, the story of Taralynn Bowers is both a personal tragedy and a commentary on justice. On one side is a 29-year-old mother of four whose life was cut short in seconds. On the other side is a 25-year-old woman, now facing the possibility of decades in prison. Between them stands a legal system tasked with determining whether the act was murder, self-defense, or something in between. The conclusion of this case remains unknown. The evidence yet to be presented will shape the final outcome. Until then, the community, the family, and the legal system remain engaged in a process that began with one gunshot on Millvale Court and now unfolds in a courtroom where accountability, truth, and justice must be weighed. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.